Greetings, people of YouTube. This is Crazy Samurai 71, and today I'd like to have another Power Rangers discussion. But today I would like to talk about my history with the show, what brought me to it, and what I could say a little bit about as far as how I got into it and my thoughts on it. So back when I was a little kid, I watched several of the early seasons, and at one point I actually stopped watching it entirely because one of the seasons for America, at the time I couldn't understand, and for some reason I don't know how this is possible, but I considered it too hard to understand and too boring. Which season was this? Oddly enough, it was SBD. That was a season for me that really turned me off, and it felt very slow. After watching it later on, I fell in love with it again, but it took me a while. What brought me back to the Power Rangers, you may wonder? Well, that would be at one point I decided to start looking into old seasons of the show, and also I looked in. Well, actually, it wasn't even that. No, at one point I was looking around for things, and I found a link to the Gokaiger 199 Super Battle whatever thing, the big movie that happened for Gokaiger, and I was like, what is this? And I recognized it as Power Rangers, and I became very curious. So I started watching the Sentai a bunch, and I started with Gokaiger, and I worked back and around, and over time I became a big fan of the show. And eventually I decided, okay, well, let me look into Power Rangers. I hadn't watched that show in a very long time. I didn't remember a lot of the episodes at the time, but I knew some. One episode that I always remember when I was very young was White Light from season 2 of MMPR, where Tommy gains his White Ranger powers, and that was an episode that always affected me a lot. The other thing I always remembered as a kid was watching the MMPR movie and also the Turbo movie. MMPR movie especially. Turbo movie was okay, but MMPR movie, I always remember the scene in the factory where they're making, where Ivan's in his CGI form, and it was a moment for me that I always remember finding it very unusual. And the CGI that's used there is the same CGI for those that might want to know this already. Might know this. I don't know if everyone knows this, but that scene, if you've watched Beast Wars, like the original Beast Wars, not like anything new, that CGI is actually the same CGI. Yeah, I actually watched Beast Wars. At one point I looked at it, and then I also watched the movie. It's like, wait, that's the same. It's practically the same CGI, and it's something that's very interesting to notice because it's that same kind of era of CGI. It's that earlier era where the CGI kind of had an odd, unusual look to it, which isn't a bad look per se, but it is something to note. The fact that they did have the same CGI, but then again, that came out around the same time. Early 90s, mid to late 90s or so. Actually, it was pretty earlier. No, yeah, like early 90s, exactly. That's right. They both came out around the same time, so the CGI, it wasn't bad per se, but it had a weird look, especially in Transformers Beast Wars. And yes, I know I'm talking about Transformers now. Why am I talking about Transformers? I just am because I've watched it before, and believe me, the CGI is like very much so the same, although if you watch Beast Wars, like the original, very creepy looking. Like, the CGI on the animals, ugh. And even on the mechs, like, ugh. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say don't watch Beast Wars, but I would say just realize this. Look at the images. I mean, don't judge a book by its cover, but at the same time, consider the fact that the CGI is not the best in the early seasons. So beware when it comes to watching Beast Wars. I'm sure plenty of people will argue with me or might agree with me, but I personally found the CGI for Beast Wars very awkward and very unusual, and that did turn me off a little bit. But I did watch the Beast Wars, and I did watch Beast Wars 2 a little bit. Regardless, let's go back to Power Rangers. I know I'm talking about Beast Wars, but that's only because I was connecting the two. What else in regard to my history can I refer to? I've been keeping up with all the recent seasons of of Power Rangers and Sentai for several years now. I've gone to PMMC. I mentioned that in my first Power Rangers discussion video. Very big deal for me, and definitely plan on going back to PMMC in the future. I plan on collecting some of the toys, and I did finally get that second box set, the one Lightspeed through Dino Thunder, which I haven't watched any of it yet, but as soon as I finish watching Lost Galaxy, because that's where I'm at right now, I'm going through my 2 box sets, and eventually I'll get to that, and I'll eventually get to my favorite season, which I mentioned before was Time Force, and believe me, I'm looking forward to it all. It should be great. What else can I say? I also do plan on just so people know now, watching. I do plan on watching the any new seasons that come out. I do plan on starting to get more like actual merchandise from the shows, other than like the Morphers. I do plan on getting mechs soon. Expect that very soon, like in the next month or so. But until then, you'll have to wait. Also, I hope to eventually do some Pokemon related Let's Play stuff. I'm not sure when that will start up, but give it time, and I'm sure at one point I'll look into maybe getting a capture card or something like that. We'll see. I'll have to find a time to do that, but we'll look into it. But I do plan on doing some Pokemon discussions too. Maybe next episode, next video. That will be posted Friday. I will discuss that, but let's continue with our discussion for now. That's just a note for all. Friday will probably be our Pokemon discussion. I'll start doing a little bit of that, and then I might come back to Power Rangers, and then maybe I'll go into TMNT some more, have a discussion specifically on that, my history about it, and just the overall show history and talking about things. So what else can I say about the Power Rangers? Which do I like better, Power Rangers or Sentai? You know, it really depends per season, because some seasons I say, oh, Power Rangers is great, and then other seasons they'll say, oh no, I think the Power Rangers and the Sentai is great, or I think just the Sentai is great. It really varies. I mean, for me, I'd say that, like, for example, if I were to compare, like, recent seasons, like, let's just talk about, okay, like, for example, like, Super Mega Force and Gokaiger. Gokaiger is, like, probably one of my favorite Sentai seasons ever. And Super Mega Force isn't a bad season, but it's not my favorite season. I would say that they're both decent. I would say that both of them are good, but I would say that Super Mega Force is not as good, while Gokaiger is very good. Another season I compare would be harder season to compare would be Ghost Sager and Mega Force. Why? I'm not against Mega Force, and I'm not against Ghost Sager, but I don't love either of them so much, so it's harder. I probably like Ghost Sager more in some ways, but at the same time, the story development for for Mega Force wasn't as restrained. It wasn't as awkward as it was for Super Mega Force. So I wouldn't say that they're both. So I would kind of put them both around the same place. Oddly enough, that's kind of where I kind of put them. Like, I put them somewhere on the same place. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, one has longer episodes and one has more episodes than the other one. But the thing is that you can't compare the number of episodes in reality, because the thing is that if you were comparing the number of episodes, then Sentai would win like pretty much every single time, except for when it came to Jew Ranger. Like, that's the only season where you could say that, oh yeah, Power Rangers won, and it's just like. That's why I don't really compare the number of episodes, because if I compare the number of episodes, then Sentai would win every single time. And I don't want to do that, because if I compare the number of episodes, then that would just be unfair. And just in general, comparing the number of episodes to the actual show, it's so irrelevant, and it just kind of ruins the whole entire idea of the two shows being two shows. Remember, two shows, two. They're not one and the same. No, I get it. Yes, the fights are basically copy and pasted, but you know what? The overall episodes, they're different on a lot of cases. Sure, there are some episodes that are basically the story's practically the same in a lot of ways, but you can't argue with the fact that they are different shows. Sure, they have similarities. Sure, there are things that are taken directly from the Sentai, but in reality, a lot of things are different. And it's so important to remember that, because I say this now, it's so significant, and believe me, I love both of them for different reasons. And for most people that think, you have to, I'm probably a Sentai purist. I'm not. Believe me when I say this. When people talk to people that are all about that talk about the Sentai a lot and compare the Sentai to the Power Ranger seasons, I always take the middle ground, because I always look at the Sentai and I always look at the Power Rangers, and I always consider, what can Saban do? What is their money situation? How are they in regard to what they do? And just in general, consider what things are happening. Not to mention the fact that they're finally making another movie. They haven't had another movie in so long, and I'm excited about that. And I mean, if they're making a movie, they must have some money, because I mean, yes, they're working with Lionsgate, and they must be contributing some money, because I mean, it's their franchise, and they're remaking and they're making like an original season, like MMPR newer movie or whatever. I'm excited for that. And believe me, I plan to get into a discussion about that probably next week or maybe over the weekend. But believe me when I say this, it's important to remember that they have been very successful with what they've done, and you always have to remember that there are two different seasons. And believe me when I say this about the Sentai Purist things, I'm not one. And don't always think that when people say, the Sentai did this and so Power Rangers is so much worse because Sentai did this, that's not true. That is not true at all. Because you know something? Power Rangers has been very successful in its own way. Sure, in a lot of ways, it's trying to rebuild itself. Like with Superman before, the whole entire aspect of them having to bring in old Rangers, that was basically to get that original love that it used to get back when the first show came out. Because when it first came out, it had a huge audience. And the audience isn't small, but it's not as big as it used to be. And that's what they're trying to do. And that's why they skipped over Go Busters, is because of the fact that Go Busters didn't do so well in Japan. And they're thinking, well, if Go Busters didn't do so well in Japan, we don't want to use a bad season. Let's use the dinosaur season, and maybe we can do a movie. Maybe we can take that movie that they did with Japan, where they had Jew Ranger, Aba Ranger, and Kiro Oger in a movie with Go Busters and make it exciting. Now, obviously, they probably won't include Go Busters. They'll probably include Super Mega Force, and that'll be interesting to see how they'll do it. But that's a smart idea. And that's the other thing, is that people like the dinosaur seasons, and people are a big fan of those, and people have a lot of different thoughts in them. People are expecting lots of different things. People expecting maybe an old Ranger to appear as a mentor, like maybe Tommy again. Hopefully it's not Tommy. I'm not against Tommy, Jason David Frank, but at the same time, it's like, I think we've seen enough of him for a while. I'm not saying we can't have him, because I mean, it's been a good 10 years since he's really appeared on the show. Well, not 10 years. What am I saying? He just appeared in the show. But at the same time, it's sort of like, let's use someone that's not the same actor every single time. I'm not against it, but I'm not sure who would do it. One person I can think of would be Austin St. John. That'd be very smart, because of the fact that he was in the war for a while as a medic, but he could easily now go back to the show if he really wanted to. And I mean, he promotes himself so much at conventions, and he promotes himself on YouTube. I subscribe to him. Believe me, he's a great guy. I met him before. Very nice. I have a shirt signed by him, and such a nice guy, so generous, so friendly, such a sweet person. Definitely someone that I feel would be very cool to have him return. He's not in the same shape that he used to be in, but it'd be very cool to see him return. He doesn't, like, it'd just be awesome. I don't know. It'd be very cool. if Austin St. John would return or something like that. I can't think of anyone else. I would not want any of the. I can't think of any of the other Rangers really returning from Mighty Morphin season 1 especially, because like for example Trini died. Amy Jo Johnson. My opinion, I'm not against her, but she's an actress that, based off of how she treats that show, she treats MMPR, she's not the nicest to it. It's something that doesn't really sit well in my mind. David Yost has a very, very, very bad relationship with Saban, and so I'm not necessarily. I would not expect David Yost to ever return. Really. What about Walter Jones? I wouldn't say no, but I would find that very unlikely. I just don't see that happening. What about other seasons from MMPR? What about other characters from MMPR? Johnny Bosch would be very cool to see. I'm not sure how they would do that, so I don't know. I think Austin St. John would be the best example. I'm trying to think who else. Karen Ashley. She'd be interesting, but I'm not sure how that would work either. Steve Cardenas. That'd be cool, but he has a very mixed relationship with Saban. He doesn't dislike them, but he's not a big fan, it seems. I've met him before. He has a very mixed relationship with Saban, so I don't know. I think that overall, as I said before, it would be Austin St. John and Catherine Sutherland. You can forget it. I mean, she was put in like last minute, and just in general, I doubt that she would do. I doubt that it would make any sense for her to do it. Why would she do it? Yeah, I have to say that now. Like, I don't see that ever happening. Where Karen Ashley, Karen Ashley was like Catherine Sutherland would ever do it. Like, that would not make any sense at all. I would think it would be Austin St. John, maybe Jason David Frank, but I think that Austin St. John would be great. I don't know. We'll see. But I really think that what they've done with these shows is great, and you just have to remember that Power Rangers, that Saban is trying their best, and though at times it seems like, oh, they could have done better here, oh, why is the story not as clear, oh, Saban, what have you done with our show, why don't they just end it? Give them a break. Give them a break. Give them a break. Believe me, they're doing their best. It's not the easiest thing in the world. I want to see you. I want to see you do what they're doing right now. I want to see you get that same kind of same actors, and I want you to do the same thing. I want you to prove to me that you're better. Because believe me, what they do, sure, it's lazy at times, but what they do is pretty good, and it may not always be the best thing in the world, but it's pretty good. And believe me, I've seen some fanfics of certain seasons where people have thought of ideas that they could have done. Like, for example, there was a fanfic that was made for Jetman that I saw. Very interesting. And believe me, I get it. There are definitely things that they could have done differently. They could have had that season. They could have had other things too. Jetman, by the way, was the season that came before MMPR. In Japan, that'd be before Jew Ranger. So give them a break, though. It's a great show. It's existed for 21 years now, and there's no reason why people should be so hard on their show all the time. All the time. I mean it. All the time. Like, it's not worth it. Because the show has done a lot of really great seasons. Sure, it's not like the early Saban where Saban had a very good reputation overall, but you know what? It's not bad. They've done their best, and they're trying to recover from Disney, because the thing was that at one point they looked at Disney and they saw what they're doing. And they're like, "You're getting lazy. What are you doing?" And like Saban was like, "Okay, we're gonna buy it back for you because we want this show to not look like a failure. Because we gave it to you guys because we thought, oh, Disney, great company. They'll probably do wonders with it." They saw it happen, and they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you ruining the show?" And they knew And they knew at that point that the show was gonna be canceled completely, removed entirely, and because Saban was smart, because Chaim Saban himself was smart, he decided, okay, I'm gonna buy this back because they screwed it up. We trusted them. We thought, oh, Disney would do wonders with this show. They effed it up. So now we're gonna buy it back from them. We're gonna return Power Rangers to its former glory. And that was the whole entire idea. Now, don't get me wrong. I thought the seasons that they done later and were good, but at the same time, there was MMPR 2010, and that was cheesy as ever. And yes, people do confuse that typically, and people think, oh, well, that was Saban. No, it wasn't Saban. It actually wasn't Saban at all. That was right before Saban. That was the 2010 MMPR. Look it up. That was during the time of Disney. Like that, I'm not even joking about that. That was Disney. I had a discussion at one point with someone a while back where I basically brought that up and I said, like, look at that, because it's true. That was Disney, and that was bad. Like, that was really bad. And don't get me wrong, people were like, and yes, some people might argue with me, but at the same time, it's like, that was really bad. That was not worth it. And plenty of people hated that because it's like, it's a really lazy attempt at it, and they're adding all these extra speech bubbles. They're trying to make it look like a comic book. It looks dumb. It looked really dumb, and it was something that really bothered me because it's like, you couldn't have tried any harder, but you had to do something stupid like that. Really, get with it. Like, what are you doing? That is not what people want to see. Believe me, that was something that really bothered me. Anyway, I think this will wrap up today's episode with that. Please subscribe, like, comment, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will probably be on Friday about Pokemon. So, hope to see you then. Bye.